Joining us on the broadcast is Cliff Smith, the Washington Director for the Middle East Forum. Through the course of the interview, Cliff will shed light on two American organizations, the HHRD and its mother organizations, the Islamic Circle of North America. The HHRD and ICNA routinely spread misinformation about India and run strong anti-India campaigns in the United States. The ICNA has even put up hoardings alleging genocide in Kashmir in the US. We take a deep dive into these organizations with Cliff. Cliff, appreciate you speaking with us, and thank you for taking out the time and taking our questions as well. The first question, you worked extensively on helping and a helping hand for the relief and development organizations. What have you found out about these organizations?
Helping Hand for Relief and Development is a Jamaat-e-Islami charity in America, and it is very clear that they are a Jamaat-e-Islami charity, and they have been involved with various extremists and radicals for some time. A number of years ago, I believe it was 2017, they held a conference in Pakistan with multiple branches of Lashkar-e-Taiba, which they promoted, which they apparently funded. One of their fundraisers in the New England area of the United States in Connecticut was actually convicted of lying to the FBI as part of a terror finance investigation. It's quite clear when you look at the court documents, for example, that his brother was involved in funding Lashkar-e-Taiba. They also quite openly work with a group called the Al-Khidmat Foundation, a Jamaat charity in Pakistan, and they've funded hundreds of projects with them. And for example, Al-Khidmat itself has openly worked with Hizbul Mujahideen, has had speeches given by senior leaders in terror groups, has sent money even to terrorist groups in other parts of the world. They're, on their website, they once mentioned that they sent money to Hamas in the Gaza Strip, for example. So this is just sort of a sampling of what they have been up to. It's not to say that the money went directly to terrorism per se always, but sometimes it did, and they clearly are sympathetic to the radicals that support.
Right, and Cliff, who are the people who are running the HHRD? What has been found out about their connections and their linkages abroad?
So, HHRD is just a sister organization of the Islamic Circle of North America. The Islamic Circle of North America is quite explicitly the Jamaat-e-Islami branch in America. Maududi, the founder of Jamaat-e-Islami, visited their opening public event a year or two before he died, and they have been active in creating other branches and networks for a long time. The current head of Islamic Circle of North America, Dr. Mohsen Ansari, was formerly the president of Helping Hands for Relief and Development. He talks about, as president of Islamic Circle of North America, the great things they can do with their HHRD branch, which he always paints as innocuous and safe. I have a different thought on that.
How did the HHRD receive its first grant of 3 crore Pakistani rupees from US aid in 2021? Was there ever a call for action against this?
So yes, they did receive, for the first time ever that I'm aware, funds from USAID. I think there's multiple issues going on here. I think that some, not all, but some in the Biden administration are sympathetic or at minimum blind to sort of Islamist radicalization in South Asia. Also, I think there's sort of a cultural problem at USAID that they simply, if something is terror designated, they think, okay, we can't do that. But anything else, it's open season. They don't look at it closely. And I think, sadly, there was just a complete lack of due diligence. Congress had raised this issue before. They had been concerned about some of the facts about HHRD that I had mentioned, and previously members of Congress had brought this up. I think HHRD was most likely trying to build a, sort of counter the concerns about them by getting money from USAID, and I think USAID simply fell for their game. Luckily, Congressman Michael McCall, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, recently did send a letter demanding answers about why this organization was chosen, and for a grant for the first time, especially after Congress complained about it. I'm hopeful that that will start to change direction on things. We'll have to wait and see.
Cliff, what more can you tell us about the Islamic Circle of North America? Who are the people that are running the ICNA?
Well, like I mentioned, Dr. Mohsen Ansari is currently the president of Islamic Circle of North America. He has been involved in Jamaat-e-Islami in Pakistan previously. He's a Pakistani immigrant. He's quite open about his affection for various Jamaat-e-Islami projects abroad. And one thing to know about them is, much like their branches in Kashmir, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, they're open about their hostility to India, and they have done a lot to promote what I would call extremist narratives about what's going on in India. For example, they put up billboards in America that said things like "Free Kashmir from fascism, oppression, and genocide." Now, I just came from Srinagar yesterday. I spent several days there, and there may be some criticisms that are valid of the Indian government and the way they've handled the issue. But there's quite clearly no genocide going on by any reasonable definition of the term. It's pure propaganda, and they've been a big...
Right, Cliff, also talk about what sort of anti-India propaganda is run by the ICNA and its subsidiaries in America.
I think there is a cottage industry that wants to exaggerate any disagreement with the Indian government, wants to spread just, way over the top problems and sort of delegitimize anything the Indian government does. And I think that has been increasingly the case of Islamist groups in America, not just ones of South Asian origin, ones that are West Asian, Middle Eastern origin. For example, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, their executive director was in front of the Indian embassy a couple years ago protesting along with all the South Asian groups. This has become a big cause for them, of pushing for a more Islamist point of view in Kashmir and against India. That's been the entire Islamist network, the Islamist way of thinking that exists in the United States has been aimed at India in recent years. And I think it's important to note, it's fine to have disagreements with the Indian government, and even disagreements with the Indian government over how they handle issues regarding Muslims. Many of them protested over the so-called hijab row, for example. For what it's worth, I thought they were right. I thought the government handled that poorly. I thought they should have been able to wear their hijabs if they so chose. However, that doesn't the same thing as saying there's genocide going on in Kashmir. It's not the same thing as wildly exaggerating any perceived, or real problem they have, just to delegitimize a country, and also, frankly, to go after Hindus as a group as well. And that's the kind of thing they do with increasing frequency.
Right, and since there are such wild allegations of genocide, what did you see in Kashmir as a third party?
Well, there's no doubt that it's a difficult situation. There's a lot of security forces all over the region. And there's no doubt that the changes that brought up on 370 are going to cause some amount of political turmoil and uncertainty. And I think I got that from talking to the locals. At the same time, I saw a lot of investment from the government, from foreign countries, from companies within India that were bringing people jobs. I talked to a waiter at the hotel I was staying at that talked about how things were very difficult after 370, but later on things were much better, and he liked the fact that there was more investment and his friends were getting jobs. I saw, just life going on more or less as normal for most people. I visited the Muslim shrines in the region. I attended one of the afternoon prayers. There was no oppression going on. There were simply people praying. And so it's a difficult situation. It's not a perfect situation. There's no doubt that the increased security and changes in governance will create tensions, but that at the end of the day, these are kinds of things that can be dealt with, and can be dealt with reasonably and rationally, provided we're not giving in to this kind of propaganda that is saying that there's dead bodies everywhere, which is just not true.
Right, Cliff, what is the role played by ICNA to rally international support for Pakistan's so-called Kashmir cause?
I think that the Islamic Circle of North America and Jamaat organizations and others that are in their support, they clearly are engaged in a campaign to go after India on more or less Pakistan's behalf. I think that they believe in Islamic rule. That's what makes them Islamist organizations. I'm not against Muslims. I'm not against Islam. I am against people imposing their religious beliefs on others as part of the government. And that is what, at the end of the day, Jamaat-e-Islami wants. That's what the Muslim Brotherhood wants. And so it's no shock that their branches in the US go around doing that same thing. So to the degree they can push for more Muslim rule, for Muslim totalitarianism in Kashmir or anywhere else, they're going to continue to do it. And that is what they're doing.
Right, Cliff, Pakistan is bankrupt and reeling under financial stress. Is there a possibility that organizations such as the ICNA are fronts that are funding terror organizations in Pakistan? Could they be sending money back to Pakistan?
It's hard to know for sure exactly how their funding works, and I think there should be more looking into that. What I can say, for example, however, is that a Islamic Circle of North America HHRD fundraiser, as I mentioned in the New England area, was convicted of lying to the FBI, and it was quite clear if you look through the court documents that there was a terror finance scheme going on where he was sending money to his brother, who was quite openly a Lashkar-e-Taiba supporter. I mean, this guy made roughly $35,000, $40,000 American dollars a year, and $200,000 had passed through his bank account in a couple of years. Clearly, this was not there was something going on that was not quite right there, and my guess is there's more of that going on. I'm not saying these groups are terror finance fronts per se. They may be, but I have no proof of that. What I am saying is there are many of people that are involved with them that are doing things that would certainly encourage the ideology of terrorism, and they are far too willing to work with terrorists whenever they seem it in their best interest, and some of their members are quite overtly involved.
Right, and similar to the HHRD and ICNA, the Middle East Forum has also exposed the Indian American Muslim Council. What have you found out about the IAMC?
Just that their founders have a long history of being involved with different radical organizations, Jamaat-e-Islami, SIMI, others, and that they continue to push, even just bigoted anti-Hindu cartoons, for example. One of their top people shared a cartoon accusing Hindus of drinking cow urine, for example. I mean, just base, disgusting smears. And that they are involved in creating the same kind of narratives that you might expect from a group that is working in the same direction as Jamaat-e-Islami and other Islamic extremist organizations.
Right, and why is there a lack of action against terror-linked organizations such as ICNA and, of course, the HHRD?
There is a cultural thing inside American politics that certain parts, for understandable reasons, for good reasons, want to be friendly and champion Muslim Americans and be concerned of their interest. And that's not bad. What is bad is there are groups such as Islamic Circle of North America that claim to represent all or most American Muslims, or a very large contingency. In reality, they represent very few. They represent basically their handful of members that are usually Jamaat-e-Islami leaders in other countries or have connections to them, and they claim to represent all American Muslims. And I think there's a hesitancy among some in the American political system to challenge them because they believe that that is true, but it's not true. And as far as like HHRD funding goes, I think that USAID is very not concerned about anything that is not on the terror designated list, and there's a cultural understanding that we are rewarded if we move money to do good things without thinking too much about if those things really are good, and without looking too deeply into the ideology of such groups. And I think that's a real problem that needs to change.
Right, ICNA and the likes run extremely vociferous anti-India campaigns, both online and offline. How must these lies be countered according to you?
I think the truth needs to be told, both about what these groups are saying and about what's really going on. I think that it is important to simply give the real facts about what's going on the ground. You don't need to sugarcoat it. You don't need to say that all criticisms of the government or of Hindus are wrong, but you do need to say that, look, we need to talk about reality here. If you want to talk about how we're best going to handle Kashmir in a post-370 time, let's talk about that. Let's not talk about genocide, because that's crazy talk. It's only done with the purpose of trying to help Pakistan and radical groups' narratives. It's not has anything to do with reality. So talking about reality and engaging in those issues honestly is, in the end of the day, is your only real way of countering it.
Right, and do you think that the people funding ICNA and the HHRD also could be funding the sudden emergence of the Khalistani movement in the United States and elsewhere, of course?
One of my colleagues have done very deep work on this issue, and he might be a better one to talk to on some level, but there is no doubt that there has been some partnership between some of these Islamist radicals and some of the Khalistani movement, and I expect that much as guys that are working for the greater good or working for the greater bad tend to coalesce together. So I would not be shocked if that became even more of a thing than it already is in the future.
All right, Cliff, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us and giving us those detailed notes and perspectives about this particular threat to our country and of course the world as well. Dipping into a short break, be right back.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.